I want y'all to know that this morning's message you've inspired, my friends, my church family. This past week, all of the letters of encouragement and emails and texts that I received, I couldn't help but to write this kind of a sermon. And it's exciting for me to talk about, because this morning I want to talk about one of the most delightful and exciting and fun things in all of Christian life. Now, without a doubt, the spiritual growth in my life as a Christian and my understanding of how Ross Chandler fits into the amazing redemptive story of God working in history and in this world, my growth in all of that was fleshed out more because of this, what I'm talking about this morning, than anything else. It is the amazing, wonderful design of God that we do two things: that we grow in community with God, and that we grow in community with one another. And that as we grow in community with God, we get to do that in fellowship and koinonia and amazing friendships with one another, this community that we have. And that is what's delightful, and that's what's exciting. And when I say community this morning, that we're a part of this community, I'm not talking about the Highland Lakes community. I'm talking about the ecclesia, the church, the community of believers. I'm talking about the fellowship that we have with people who are our friends, people who are close to us, who we share and do life with. I love it. It's the social aspect of the Christian life. And you know what? It makes sense, because God himself is a very social God. God exists in what is called Trinity, and it's a community. Father and Son and Holy Spirit. You have the community of Trinity. And so as God creates us in his image, he creates us to enjoy community with one another in the same way that God has enjoyed the community of the Trinity since the very beginning of time, since eternity. And so we're made to enjoy social interaction and deep friendships and love with one another. And so last night, I was getting ready for this, and I go over to Hannah, and she's eating with one of her great friends, and they're at the dinner table. And I sit next to him, and I say, "Girls, I got to ask y'all a very important question." And I say, if you couldn't go to church tomorrow, if me and your mommy said, we're done with church forever, girls, we're never going back, what is it that you would miss the most about it? What would you miss the very most? And I waited for their answer, and then unanimously, just with zeal and passion, they said, your sermons, that's what we would miss the most. No, of course, no, they didn't say that. They didn't say it because it wouldn't be true. What they said is the same thing that any of you would say. They said we would miss our friends. And y'all, I say amen to that, to miss friends. Every Sunday, I get to come in here and to be with all of you, and I get to sing with you and see you in the halls, and I sincerely and authentically like it. It would be a lot less fun if I were preaching in here to nobody. But I get to be with all of you, and I get to sing these songs with all of you. Mother Teresa said that loneliness is the most miserable of poverty. Loneliness. And so God gives us a way out of that. God tells us that we have to live this life as a Christian in a certain way if we want to be a part of his movement in our world. And God is moving. It's a redemptive story and a movement in history. And if we want to be caught up in all that God is doing, then we have to live a certain way in how we talk and how we think and how we act. It transforms our life. But we don't have to go into this movement and do all of that alone. If God were to put it on any of you to follow me into this movement of redeeming our world and mission and say that you have to do it alone, it would terrify you. It would be the most intimidating and the scariest proposition for God to say, hey, follow me, and you're alone in it, but you don't. Because you get to follow God in this change of behavior and in the songs and in Bible study and understanding all of it. You get to do it with really, really good friends and people that you love and that love you and that know you. You get to do it with what's called a cohort. Cohort. Everybody say cohort. Cohort. 3 years ago, I started a doctorate at Baylor University, and I go in for the interview, and they start telling me what all is involved in this doctorate, and they start talking to me about all the types of research and quantitative research and qualitative research, and you know that you're in trouble when you have to look up words in the dictionary during the interview process. And they start talking to me about all of these things that I'm going to have to do. My wife is sitting there next to me. I'm trying to keep a good face with these professors, and in my mind, I'm panicking. And I'm trying to do anything except cry like a girl and run out of the room. And I think for a moment, well, I know what to say to them. This has been nice. Thanks, but no thanks. To tell you the truth, my church back home, they don't even know what degrees I currently have. They assume I have a high school diploma, but they don't care about any of this. They don't give a rip whether or not I'm here or not. And I thought for a moment, Ross, just walk out. You'll lose your dignity, but that's okay, man. And then here's something that kept me from leaving. They said, you got to do all of this stuff, and it's going to be hard, but you have this thing called a cohort. And they said, let us tell you about the cohort. They said, you don't have to suffer alone, and you don't have to celebrate alone, and when you're confused, you can call them, and when you have a good idea, you can tell them, and when they have a good idea, they'll tell you about it. It's called a cohort, and they introduced me to them, and it's Steve, and it's Ryan, and it's Matt. And it's a guy named Morgan who showed up to the first day of doctoral seminars without any shoes on. And it's a guy named Kurt, who is the college minister at First Baptist Church Waco. And it's a guy named Victor, who is a missionary in South America and Peru that had a little pet penguin that he called Pinguino. And I love Victor. And it's a guy named David. And David is the pastor of a church in Mississippi called Blackjack Baptist Church. And he's awesome. And I love David. And there's a guy named Ron, and he's this huge, almost 7-foot black man, and he's just intimidating and fun. He has this big, booming preacher voice. And I listen to my little squeaky voice, and I think, oh, what a voice that guy has. And there's Carolyn, amazing Carolyn, and she's in this doctorate cohort with all of us, and she's 65 years old. She's brilliant. And I think of our cohort and how we've experienced all of these things for 3 years together. Who is your cohort? Who's your cohort? We don't have to think about God alone. That's good. You got to think about God, yes, but you don't have to do it alone. You have to obey God, yes, but you don't have to obey God alone. You have to read the Word of God and study it, but you don't have to do it without asking somebody else, what does this mean? I don't understand when Paul says this. I don't understand when Jesus said it, when he talks in the Sermon on the Mount about all this stuff. What does it mean to you? You know, Ryan and Todd and Jason, help me a little bit with all this stuff because I can't do it alone. You don't even have to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to bear on our society or our culture and be missional in your approach in life alone. You can do it with very, very good friends. I mean, people who make you laugh, and people who make you smile, and people that you enjoy being with, people who every once in a while brings you a Starbucks coffee, and people who laugh with you and cry with you. That's exciting. That's what you get to have. So we have this community. So I wonder how we can build on this idea and have better community, better cohorts in this place, better, deeper relationships. if that's the place, y'all, where real growth occurs in our lives, then don't we need to consider how to do it better and how to do it in a way that takes our relationships to the next level with one another, to really get to know each other. So how do y'all know if your relationship with somebody has gotten to the next level? Here is one way you can know. Let's say that you're in somebody's house and you're hanging out, you're just in the living room, and you start to get hungry, and you have several options. I guess you can go home, you could go and get something to eat, but you think about your friend. You're just in their house hanging out, and you think, why should I go do that? They got a refrigerator full of food. And so you get up from their couch, you go into their kitchen, and you open their fridge, and you start getting out food, and you make yourself a sandwich, and it's not weird. They don't come in and say, what are you doing? You're just making yourself a sandwich. It's the level of friendship that I call fridge rights. It is the kind of person that says, you know what? I don't feel like making any food tonight. If you're hungry, go in there and get you some. Why don't even you make me dinner tonight in my own home? It's the kind of friend that you can go in and their life is open. And so the refrigerator is a symbol. It's a picture of the openness of their life, that they're opening it up for you, and you can go in and you can look and you can say, I don't know why in the world y'all don't have Hellman's Real Mayonnaise in this house. Something is wrong with this. It's the fridge rights. It's the place in friendships where you're that open with one another and that close with each other. So y'all, I submit to you this. Is it possible for all of us in here to have a revival in this regard? A revival in sharing and doing life with each other, to where we're all relating with one another in a very high, deep kind of way. Fridge rights. You're opening up your lives to each other and sharing. Why? Because it's powerful? Yeah. Because it's fun? Absolutely. Because it's a better way to live the Christian life, to live it sharing life with one another. So can we, by the power of the Holy Spirit, have a revival of relationships in this place? The cool thing about Marble Falls is this: the vast majority of you in here did not grow up here. The vast majority of you here moved here from everywhere else. And you need friends. You need closeness and companionship and relationships. And so we can do it. We can have cohorts in this place. And y'all, I could look to a lot of Scripture to demonstrate a good cohort. Good, solid friendships. We could look, if you wanted to, at 1 Samuel chapter 20 in the relationship of David and Jonathan, his best friend. We could do that. We also could look at the life and the Gospels of Jesus Christ and how he was always going over to people's houses and eating with them constantly. Always. He goes over to the Pharisees are dogging Jesus. I'm going over to their house. I don't mind. All the time. He goes over to the house of sinners and tax collectors and disciples. And he spent a lot of time at Peter's house, one of his disciples in a town called Caesarea. He's always at people's homes. He's always doing life with them. He's always eating with them. That's Jesus. Here's something amazing. Do y'all know what he was doing the night before he was crucified? The night before he was going to have the worst day of his life. Torture and death. Of all the things Jesus could be doing before he died, all the things, guess what he's doing? He's eating with friends. He's hanging out with people who care about him, and he cares about them. He's eating with them. He's having what's called table fellowship with his friends. And in the middle of that table fellowship in John chapter 13, all the way through John chapter 17, Jesus is talking to them about what real love is. Love one another, love one another. And then he gets down from the table, he washes their feet in order to help them to understand what loving one another really means. It all happens in a home. It all happens to build all of these relationships. We could talk about all of that. Or I could talk about the early church after Jesus ascended into heaven and the early church is left, in the relationships that they had with one another, and how Paul was always going over to people's homes, and how Peter would go over to people's homes, and how the church would meet in people's homes all the time, and you had this real intimacy. We could read Acts chapter 2, verse 44, and talk about fridge rights. Listen to Acts chapter 2, verse 44. It says, all of the believers were together and had everything in common with one another, selling their possessions and their goods, they gave to everyone as they had need. Sounds like fridge rights to me. You open up your home, you open up everything so that you can do life with people. That's what Acts chapter 2, verse 44, that's how it characterizes the early church. People who were doing life in what's called cohort fashion. And they loved one another, and they knew each other and supported each other. Y'all, I could talk about all these very positive scriptures, but instead I want to talk to you about a negative scripture, because sometimes it's positive to talk about something negative. And rather than see how good we could do and show all of these as the examples of how we are to be, what if I did this instead? To look at negative examples and how you could have a friendship that goes sour, or a cohort that goes sour, a Sunday school class that really messes up, or a discipleship group that doesn't pan out the way that you hoped. That there are some people in your life that you thought were really going to be close, and doggone it, they're not close to you anymore. There are stories like that too. And Job is one of those stories. Most of you know the story. Job has horrible things happen to him. His whole body is broken out in boils, and he loses his children. He loses everything. And the only person that he has left in his life is his mean, witchy wife. And she is mean, man. She comes to him in the middle of his misery and just kind of crosses her arms and says, why don't you just curse God and die, Job? That's a wife for you. They need some marriage counseling. It's not good. And that's who she is. So Job is alone in his misery. And in the middle of that, finally he sees his friends coming. They're showing up. And he's sitting there and his body hurts and he's so sad. He's just sad. And he's wearing sackcloth and he's sitting on a heap of ashes, and he just can't do life normally. Have y'all ever gotten to that point where you cannot do life normally because you're so brokenhearted? And that was where Job was. So then he sees them. There's three friends, and they're coming on the horizon. And he can make them out. Hey, there's Eliphaz, and there's Bildad, and there's Zoar. They're coming, and they start to walk toward him, and they don't recognize him at first, but he sure recognizes them. He sees them, and Zophar, and they all come over to him, and they say, Job. And they just start breaking down, and they're crying, and they kind of just collapse with him. And they say, if Job has ashes on his head, then we'll put ashes on our head. And if Job is crying, then we'll go ahead and cry with him. And if Job doesn't have things going well, we're going to leave our home and all of our situation and mourn with our friend in the middle of all of this. And here's what it says. When Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, heard about all the troubles that had come upon Job, they set out from their homes and they met together by agreement to sympathize with him and to comfort him. That's awesome. And when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him, and they began to weep aloud. And they tore their robes and they sprinkled dust on their heads. And then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, and no one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. Y'all, what a cohort, what a class, what a group. That's where discipleship can really expand and do well. That's healing. That's the way to do it. Y'all know how to treat somebody. I hope you do. If they're going through a bad time, you don't show up and start giving advice. You show up and you apply the 3 H's. You show up and you hush, you hang around, and you hug. You hush, you hang around, and you hug. Nothing else. And that's what they did for Job. And unfortunately, though, it didn't last, because as soon as they started opening their mouths, they started telling Job the reason that he's suffering. They started saying, Job, you know the reason that all this has happened to you is because you're really wicked inside. Something is wrong with you. You have brought all of this on yourself. Now, in the book of Job, we know the truth because it's written in third person, and the author lets us into the truth of all of it, and that is that it wasn't Job's fault. Job was blameless. He was righteous. And so they're wrong in saying that it was all Job's fault. We know it, and Job knows it, but they don't know it at all. And finally, one of them, Eliphaz, says this to him as he starts accusing him in chapter 15. He says this, now listen to me, and I will explain to you. Let me tell you what I have seen and what wise men have declared. Y'all, has anyone ever come to you in the middle of your pain and said, let me tell you why God is doing all of this? Let me explain to you how God can really bring about great things based on your suffering. That the real reason that you're suffering is God has a greater purpose for all of this. And they start to tell you all of this theology and all of this stuff they think to try and help you. So this guy says to Job, let me tell you why you are suffering, Job. And then he says this, has all his days the wicked man suffers torment. Who is he accusing here? Who's the one suffering? Job. Job is suffering, and he says, all of his days, Job, wicked men. They're the ones who suffer. And so Job is like, whoa, I thought you came here to comfort me, not accuse me. You're saying that all of this, and it goes on, it says, the ruthless, through all the years stored up in him. You're calling me ruthless? You're calling me wicked? And in chapter 18, Bildad even goes so far as to say, you know what, Job? People who suffer like you, they really don't even know God. You must not even have a relationship with God at all. And then Eliphaz speaks up again in chapter 22, and he starts giving a long list of possible sins that maybe Job did some of these sins and he just kind of forgot. And so he just starts listing possible sins. He's trying to just kind of see what sticks against the wall. Because Job is saying, man, I'm blameless. I haven't done all of this. And I don't know why, God. I know God is just, and I don't know why all of this is happening to me. And Eliphaz is saying, you're wrong. You're so wrong. You have sinned. And here, let me try to help you figure out what's your sin. He said this to him. Is not your wickedness, Job, great? Are not your sins endless? You demanded security from your brothers for no reason. Remember? And Job's like, no, I don't remember. I didn't do that. And he says, okay, well then, you stripped men of their clothing, leaving them naked, right? Job's saying, no, I would have remembered. You gave no water to the weary, and you withheld food from the hungry, as if Job is going to say, yeah, that's right. I remember doing that. A person came up and they were dying of thirst, and then I just yelled at them to get off of my land. Sure. Job says, no, none of these things are me. And he says, well, you withheld food from the hungry, though you were a powerful man owning land and an honored man. You're living on all of this land. You have all of this. And yet you sent widows away empty-handed, remember? And you broke the strength of the fatherless. That's why the snares are all around you and why sudden peril terrifies you and why it's so dark and you cannot see and why the flood waters cover you. You remember all that, Job? And Job is saying, no, none of that's true. And finally, Job answers them this way. He says this, you know, I've heard many things like this. And then he calls them what they are. Miserable comforters, all of you are. This comforting business, y'all came to help me. You're pretty pathetic at it. I feel a lot worse now than I did when you first got here. You are the worst comforters that I've ever seen. Y'all, with friends like this, who needs enemies, right? When you got friends who act like that, why do y'all suppose Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar did that? Why did one after another they start accusing him and talking to him about his own sin? Why do y'all think they did? Here's the deal. More than likely, they thought they were helping. These guys thought that they were helping Job and that they were going to help pick him up by giving him all of this. They knew the Bible very well, and they knew all of the theology about God and how God is omniscient and omnipresent. They knew about how God is all-powerful and all-loving and just, and that God is going to be just to people. So what's happening to Job can't be for nothing. He must have done something, because a loving God would never allow that to happen to somebody like that. They thought they knew all of this theology about God, and they thought what Job needed the most in his moment of misery was a Sunday school lesson. What he needed the most was a sermon to tell him and to teach him about how bad he really was and how he had been doing all these, to really help him understand God. Y'all know what? When Jesus said to be salt of the earth, he does not mean by that to rub salt into the wounds of people. It's not what he's talking about. I've seen some people use verses in the Bible in a way that hurts people more than helps them. To use the Bible as a club instead of something to help them. And here is where Job's intimate community started to break down. His cohort, his friends, started to disintegrate. Y'all, they broke down with what is called theological arrogance. Is they're the superior ones in theology in the group, and they have to tell everybody else what to say and think and believe and fix it. They broke down with ill-formed advice, and they certainly broke down with mistrust. As Job is saying, here is my reality, and they say, no, we don't trust your words. His group completely broke down. What should they have done? Here's probably what would have been best. If they would have just kept doing what they started out doing in chapter 2. They started out doing very well. All they needed to do was keep doing that. Keep crying with Job and keep listening to him. And then here's what would have happened. Together, as a group, as friends, not as somebody who is superior standing over you, but as friends and as equals, they could have explored together the mysterious enigma of this world, and that is, we don't always know how a loving and a powerful God can let certain horrible things happen. Y'all, that is the enigma. That is mysterious. We don't know the answers to all of those things. We don't know why. Somebody in this room perhaps had a son or a daughter that walked away from the church, that walked away from God. There is mystery in that. We don't know. We don't know why some of you in here struggle, and why I might struggle over that decision that I made a long time ago. We don't know why the horrible divorce occurred and all of those things. And the question, where was God in all of that? Those conversations need to happen. We need to be able to talk about that kind of stuff. We have to be able to talk about that kind of stuff. And so, who are the friends that you can talk about it with when those conversations come about? Because you cannot just talk about those types of things with just anybody. It'll freak them out. They'll start to wonder what's wrong with you for even bringing it up. So you have to have friends that you're able to talk about all of it with. Dear friends, friends that give you fridge rights, the right to invade their space, the right to come in and to share with them whatever it is that they have. Jesus spent time and he ate with tax collectors and sinners and Pharisees in those in those moments of fridge rights, there are powerful flashes of authenticity that break out. And because of that, it opens the door for transformation in all of our lives. That's what it does. This morning, I want you all to know, if you're following Jesus Christ or want to follow him, you are getting a degree. You're working on gaining a doctorate degree in the Christian life. And y'all, it's pretty hard. It's pretty doggone hard. And a lot of people don't do it. And some people start out doing it and then they bail for some reason. There are a lot of people who don't do it well. But all of you who are working on the degree of the Christian life, I want you to know this. You cannot graduate. You will not do well. You will not finish or make it through without a loving, good cohort. You won't be a strong Christian without it. A group of people that gives you the right to invade their space, to invade their life, because they're working on the same degree as you. And they're trying to follow Jesus too. And they're needing someone to bounce ideas and life off with well, and somebody to confess to and say, man, I blew it, I messed up. And then somebody to say, man, I did too. Let's do better together. That's what we need. We will not make it without a cohort. In our church, our cohorts are many. We have cohorts in Sunday school, and some of you are in a Sunday school class and you absolutely love it. It is the best thing since sliced bread. Not all of you, though, go to Sunday school or involved in Sunday school. Some of you might have a cohort that you make just really naturally. A group of friends that are very, very close to you, and they're godly Christian friends, and you do life together. Some of you are involved in cohorts that we call our life groups, and we're starting new life groups, and this is a ministry that's going to grow. New homes are going to be opening up, and many of you can connect with some of these homes. You're going to hear a lot about it, and you can start signing up and getting ready for it. Call Sue this week and say, Sue, tell me about the life groups. I want to be involved. And you can do that. But y'all, where is your cohort? And I'm not talking about just a friend, but I'm talking about a Christian friend who's a Christ follower and trying hard to be like Jesus that you can walk through life with. Can you think of anything that could bring more joy into your life than building great friends to journey with you as together you follow Jesus? And so what are our life groups going to do? What do people who are in these cohorts do? They do these things. They play together and hang out together. Their kids go to soccer games together. Yeah, that's part of it. And Little League together. They play together. Also, they eat together. Table fellowship. They enjoy eating. And I want you to know, man, it doesn't matter what you eat with your friends. It just matters that you're trying to eat with them and hanging out with them. Come over to my house. We'll have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and enjoy each other's company. And that's what we'll do. We eat together, but also we talk together in these cohorts and in these groups, these intimate groups that have fridge rights. We talk. Y'all, we talk about everything. We talk about the important things in life, and we talk about the frivolous things in life. We talk about all of it. Everything is game with people that you're friends with to talk about. And you bring what the Bible has to say about every topic in the world. You bring the Bible to bear on that topic. That's what we do. Well, here's what's happening in my relationship. Well, what does the Bible say about that? Well, here's what's happening in politics and in the world. Well, what does the Bible say about that? You bring the Bible to bear on every conversation, and you do it together. And also, last, you bless each other. Play, eat, bless. And what was the other one? Play, eat, bless, talk. Play, eat, talk, and bless. That's what these life groups are going to do with one another. And as you form these types of relationships and it comes to these new levels, be aware of this. Open your home up to people. Go over to people's houses, and if you open your home up, your house does not have to be perfect. Invite people into a messy home one day on purpose. See what they do. Say, here's what we go through sometimes, and they'll come in and they'll say, man, God bless you. Thank you for not picking that up. This feels great. And here's something else in the cohorts, in the life groups that we are going to share with one another. Don't be in competition with each other. Don't ever feel like just because your table is not as pretty as somebody else's table, or you don't have a nice chandelier over it, or you don't have nice plates, that you're about to eat on paper plates, that in any way that your friends that you come over would think any less of you for any of that. Here's what we can't be. Have any of y'all seen the billboard on Highway 71 as you're coming back from Bee Cave? And it's advertising a certain subdivision where you can go and buy a home in this subdivision, and the billboard says this, and some of you have seen it. You're driving westbound on 71, and the billboard says, buy one of our homes, and it says, your friends will be jealous. Y'all seen that? I think it's still up. Buy one of our homes. Our homes are so beautiful and so nice and so awesome that your good friends are going to be jealous of you. That's crazy. Y'all, why on earth would anyone want to cause a feeling like that in a friend? Why on earth? I don't know. I don't know. Is that appealing to any of y'all? Does it appeal to any of you to have something that's so cool and so nice that your thought is, I bet all my friends want this. I bet all my friends will be jealous of what I have. And that brings you joy at some level? I don't think so. I don't think that's appealing to anybody. Why would a person be anything except happy and joyful about something good that comes to their friend? That billboard reminds me of something that Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar might say as they were eaten up with all kinds of issues in their life. And you may not have considered this before, but y'all, if you connect with a group of people that shares life together and join the revival that I'm talking about today, start eating with one another. Every week, I'm going to eat with somebody. I'm going to spend time with them. If you will start that, it's going to save you from a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and pain, because it's hard to be angry about things when you have really good friends. Your life could go downhill and things could go awful, but if you have really, really good friends, it's hard to be angry. Here's something that happened here in our church as a perfect example of this. 2 years ago, there was a lady and a husband, very, very young couple, newly married, and they joined First Baptist Church Marble Falls to be a part of all of this, but they didn't want to be a part of all of this. I am the only person that they knew. And I love them. I was close to them. And they were close to me. So they joined our church, but they never got involved in any kind of a discipleship group. They never drew close to any of you. They didn't go to Sunday school. They didn't attend a life group. All they knew was the preacher. And that's it. And so I tried to be there for them and do the best, but every Sunday they would come into worship and they would just walk out. They didn't talk to anybody else. Now, they loved the music and they loved it, but they didn't know anybody. So here's what happened. And this will always happen. It's not if, it's when. Difficulty fell on their lives. And they started to struggle, and they called, and they needed me to be there for them. And guess what? I wasn't there for them. I messed up. I wasn't the pastor that I needed to be. I didn't do well. And I should have. I make no excuses. I wasn't there for them. And so they got very, very angry. And they said, we're not coming back to that church. And we may not go to any church. And today they're sitting at home very angry and very bitter. Y'all, here's what could have helped. Just in case I'm not there for somebody, I sure hope that you have a cohort who can be there for you. That you have a group of people, a life group that you love, people who have opened up their home, that you have fridge rights with, so that if you have difficult times and you can be honest with them, say whatever you want, but those are the people who can rally behind you. Just in case I can't make it. just in case I don't make it and it's my fault. But you will not be sad. You will not be angry. You will not bail out. You will not lose your religion. You will not lose faith because other people rallied behind you, because Christians stuck together, and because you have that group. That's what it is. It's pretty amazing. The truth is that as frustrating as people can be, it's pretty hard to find a good substitution. People. It's all we have. So will you start with me this morning a revival of sharing life together, eating with one another and being together? One of the great small groups, one of the great life groups that we see happening in the Bible is in Mark chapter 2, where a group of friends have another friend who is paralyzed. In all of his life, he lives it simply on a mat that is probably 3 foot by 3 foot, and he can't walk, he can't do anything on his own, and he's completely depending on his friends. And so one day, his friends hear about Jesus, and based on their faith in Jesus, they say, we want to take you to see this man. So these friends, this cohort, they get their friend up in the blanket, and they're all carrying him, and they get to the house where Jesus is, but they can't get in because the crowd is so big. But these friends aren't going to give up. They are dedicated, and they climb up on top of the roof, and they start breaking down, and the roof and everything is falling in. And these guys lower their friend to Jesus Christ. They are desperate to be what God is calling them to be and to love each other. That's what they're doing. And it's pretty amazing because Jesus sees them and he says, your faith is healing you. Your friends. Y'all, these roof crashers, that is the killer small group in the entire Bible. That's what it's about. Being so excited to be there for your friends, to do what it takes to help them to know Jesus Christ, to do life together with one another. I want y'all to join in that. I want you to sign up and be a part of life groups and to do life intimately with everyone around you. Patrick Henry is the statesman who said, give me liberty or give me death. You know about him, but you may not know about a Jewish rabbi named Hani Hamagel who said this: give me friendship or give me death. You know, those are our options as well. If you don't open your lives to other people, to other Christians, and do life together, then our church will die. And you know what? Your spirit will die too. Your choices are two: friendship or death. So church, which one do y'all choose? I hope that you're going to choose to play together, to eat together, to talk together, and to bless each other. In the doctorate of the Christian life that we're all getting, will you form cohorts with one another? Spend time with each other.